Welcome to my official Week 2 recap of the 2024 college football season. In this video, I'm going to recap every single top 25 game, and I'll also recap a few of the big unranked games. Let's start off with the number one team in the country. The Georgia Bulldogs played Tennessee Tech. Georgia won this game 48-3. I didn't think Georgia would cover that high spread in the 50s because Georgia just isn't a team that runs up the score. But regardless, there is not a lot to say about this game. Georgia looks very good and they dominated this game. Ohio State actually covered the spread this week and they dominated Western Michigan 56-0. I didn't watch this game, but Jeremiah Smith went off for 100 yards again, and Quinshon Judkins also had 9 carries for over 100 yards. Ohio State is definitely a really good team. We also had the big Week 2 matchup between Texas and Michigan. I was expecting this game to be very lopsided and kind of a similar game to the Georgia-Clemson game, and I picked Texas to cover because I knew Michigan didn't have the offensive playmakers or the quarterback to compete in this game. The only reason Michigan was ranked in the top 10 is because they won the Natty last year. But I'm telling you guys, Michigan is a 9-3 team at best this year. They have a big quarterback problem, and I do think they have taken a bit of a step back defensively and at the line of scrimmage. They are basically a better version of Iowa now, and no, this is not an overreaction, I'm being serious. Last year is in the past. Michigan is not a playoff team this year. They might be a top 25 team, but that's about it. Texas could have easily won this game by more. The offense looked really good. The receivers are really good. The receivers are probably just as good as they were last year, and Quinn Ewers is looking really good too at the quarterback position. And I've also been impressed with what I've seen from the defense so far. Right now, I'd put Texas up there with Georgia and Ohio State for the Tier 1 teams in college football. But what about Alabama struggling with South Florida? They aren't the only top 10 team that struggled in Week 2, but Alabama fans cannot be happy with this performance. The offensive line has been concerning, and they were giving up big runs defensively. Alabama was winning this game 14-13 heading into the fourth quarter. They finally cleaned some things up in the fourth quarter and ended up winning this game by 26 points. And I do think South Florida is a pretty good team. They are my sleeper team in the G5. And I think South Florida will make the American Championship game, and they have a sneaky chance to make the playoffs out of the group of 5. But let's be real, Alabama shouldn't be struggling with a team like South Florida. Alabama had 13 penalties that cost them 120 yards in this game. So that definitely needs to be cleaned up. And here you have it, Notre Dame loses to an unranked group of 5 team in Northern Illinois. What can I say about Notre Dame? Well, Notre Dame's offense was a bit concerning against Texas A&M, but I really didn't think it was that bad. And in this game, Riley Leonard went 20 for 32 for only 160 yards passing and 2 interceptions. And what was even more surprising is that the defense gave up nearly 400 yards to Northern Illinois. This was such a weird game, and Notre Dame's playoff chances just went completely down the drain. And the only way Notre Dame has a shot at the playoffs is if they go 11-1. But how will they beat Louisville, Georgia Tech, or USC if they can't even beat Northern Illinois? Let's give props to this Northern Illinois team on the victory. Let's not forget this was a really good group of 5 team from 2010 to 2014. During that time period, they had 5 double-digit win seasons. I'm excited to see what Northern Illinois can do this season, and they are a team to keep an eye on this year. But man, this was a terrible loss for Notre Dame. Once again, Ole Miss plays a terrible opponent and they win big. Nothing much to say about this game. I believe Jackson Dart leads the country in passing yards as of now, so he's padding his stats for a possible Heisman campaign. But Ole Miss is now 2-0. We also saw Oregon struggle against Boise State. Oregon had 2 special team touchdowns in this game that potentially won this game for them. Oregon really hasn't found their identity yet this season. Don't get me wrong, Boise State is a good team. Boise State is my group of 5 team to make the playoffs this season, but Oregon really needs to step up their game. This is a team that people are picking to win the national championship, but they are not living up to their standard. They have some guys injured, but that is no excuse, and they have a new rotation on the offensive line, but the lack of depth on the offensive line may be concerning. Dillon Gabriel once again got sacked multiple times in this game. They did play a better second half, and the offensive line did better, but again, there's so many things that this team can fix before they play Ohio State. Luckily, Oregon doesn't play anybody tough until Ohio State. This team could realistically start 5-0 even if they don't play good, so they have time to improve. But dang, Oregon really does not look like a top 10 team right now. Ashton Jeanty sure looks like the best running back in college football though, and he ran for just under 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. Boise State has themselves a beast at running back, and I am excited to see what this team could do in 2024. Here we have another top 10 team struggling. What is going on? Penn State beats Bowling Green 34-27, and Bowling Green had 375 yards of offense in this game, and they were winning this game by 2 possessions at one point. This could have ended up being like that Notre Dame game. Luckily, Penn State showed some promise with explosive plays, and they did come back and win this game, but beating Bowling Green by a touchdown was not ideal. This really doesn't change my opinion about Penn State too much. They are likely to go 10-2 this year once again. Missouri still hasn't played anybody, but they did shut out Buffalo 38-0, and they covered the spread. They have a tricky game against Boston College next week, so I think we'll learn more about Missouri after next week, and I'm looking forward to that game. Utah played a very weird game against Baylor. I'm still a little bit skeptical about this Utah team. I do think when they are clicking on all cylinders, they are the best team in the Big 12. But they were beating Baylor 23-0, and then Cam Rising hurts his hand, and Utah couldn't even score without Cam Rising. Utah ended up not covering, and Utah only won the game 23-12. Cam Rising is the heart and soul of that offense, and I'm holding back on picking Utah to win the Big 12 in year one because of the injury concerns and the fact that they cannot score without their quarterback. The Big 12 is absolutely wide open, and I don't see a clear favorite in the conference as of now. But regardless, Utah does move to 2-0 on the season. Miami beat Florida A&M 56-9. Cam Ward went off once again for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Miami is looking like a very good team, and they could be a team that makes a run in the college football playoff with that roster talent that they have. What about USC shutting out Utah State 48-0? USC scoring 48 points against a mid-Utah State team is one thing. There's nothing surprising about that, but USC held Utah State to 0 points, and that's surprising to me. Last season, they probably would have gave up like 20 points to this Utah State team. USC really looks like a good all-around team, and that could help them in the Big Ten. I said it in the offseason that Lincoln Riley was taking a new approach to rebuilding this team, and so far the result might be paying off quicker than I expected. I don't understand all the people that were saying Lincoln Riley is in the hot seat. He has won double-digit games every year until 2023. And so far, he is having a good 2024 season, and it looks like there's potential for USC to turn that defense around. D'Anton Lynn was a big hire for USC defensively, and he gives them a realistic chance in the Big Ten. Right now, the Tier 1 teams in the Big Ten for me are Ohio State and Oregon, but with Oregon struggling, don't be surprised if they aren't even a Tier 1 team, and maybe USC steps up and makes the Big Ten championship game instead. Oregon might not be as good as people think, but they still have a very talented roster and room to grow. But Michigan, on the other hand, they are not that good of a team, and I actually think USC is going to beat them in 2 weeks when they play. Right now, I'd say Penn State, USC, and Nebraska are the Tier 2 teams in the Big Ten. And I will talk about why I have Nebraska as a Tier 2 Big Ten team later in this video. But let's move on to the next game, which was number 14 Tennessee completely destroying NC State. All the belief I had in this NC State offense can be thrown completely out the window. There is absolutely no excuse for losing to Tennessee 51-10. I don't care if you are playing the Georgia Bulldogs. NC State was supposed to be a top 15 team for me, and they have disappointed me. I really like what this NC State team had offensively, but I'm definitely not buying into the hype with this NC State team anymore. NC State had 143 total yards of offense in this game, and Nico Iamaleava even threw 2 picks to give NC State a chance. Tennessee looks like a legit playoff team, and they also look like more of a complete team in 2024, which is pretty big for Josh Heupel's squad. NC State doesn't look great, but regardless, beating a top 25 team by 40 plus points is a huge statement for Tennessee. Tennessee ran the ball for 250 yards in this game, and 5 different guys had carries. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Tennessee can do the rest of this season, and I certainly have them as a playoff team. I picked Houston to cover against Oklahoma, but I was not expecting Oklahoma to struggle this bad. Jackson Arnold does not look great, and Oklahoma has a tough road ahead in the SEC. I think this is going to be a tough year 1 in the SEC for Brent Venables and this Oklahoma squad. I like where this team is heading with Brent Venables, but they have 5 new starting offensive linemen for 2024, and Jackson Arnold I don't think he's quite ready to carry this team on his back, and that is just my honest opinion. Oklahoma State managed to beat Arkansas in overtime 39-31, but they did not impress me at all. The offense played pretty well, and I do think Arkansas will be an okay team and maybe a bowl team, but Oklahoma State is supposed to be a top contender in the Big 12, and they are giving up over 600 yards to a mid-SEC team. Arkansas outgained Oklahoma State by nearly 300 yards in this game, and Oklahoma State got lucky to get away with this win. The Big 12 isn't really looking that great, and Kansas State also had to come back from behind against Tulane. They were down 10 points at halftime. They did ultimately win the game by 7 points. This was a solid win for Kansas State. I actually like this Tulane team, their freshman quarterback and Ball, but I expected a little bit more from this Kansas State team. I picked them to win the Big 12, but I'm really not sure who will end up winning the Big 12 at the end of the year. Because nobody in the Big 12 looks really good outside of maybe Utah, who I'm still not really buying. It's still early in the season, but I'm hoping somebody can step up in the Big 12 and show that they are a clear favorite to win this conference, but that might not happen. Regardless, Kansas State wins a close one against Tulane on the road, and it wasn't a terrible win. LSU managed to beat Nicholls 44-21. It wasn't a very impressive win, but I'm not going to overreact to this game too much. I'm still trying to figure out this LSU team. They played okay defensively against USC, but they give up 21 points to Nicholls. I really don't know what's happening. And here we have it, another Big 12 team underperforming, and Kansas outright lost to Illinois, and Jalen Daniels was so disappointing in this game. Maybe Illinois is better than I give them credit for, but I was confident that Kansas was going to win and cover just like they did last year. Jalen Daniels played almost as bad as Riley Leonard. He went 18 for 32 for only 140 yards and he threw 3 picks. And that is a terrible stat line for a quarterback that the media perceives as a top 15 college football quarterback. This was a tough loss for Kansas, but Illinois might be better than I expected. What is going on with Arizona? The Big 12 is in complete shambles right now. Arizona manages to score 61 points against New Mexico, but they managed to only score 22 points against Northern Arizona. I don't expect Arizona's offense to be that bad. My questions come defensively, but this game was the other way around. They couldn't score. I didn't watch the game, so I didn't know what happened, but again, a team out of the Big 12 underperforms, and this was very bad. Finally, we have a team that didn't disappoint in the Big 12, and I actually picked Iowa State to upset Iowa. Because I'm not as high on Iowa as most people are, I think they will at least lose 3 games this year. And so far, my prediction has aged well because Iowa State upset Iowa 20-19. I'm going to keep an eye on Iowa State because they have a lot of returning production from last year, and maybe they have a shot at winning the Big 12. But once again, the Big 12 is so unpredictable. Louisville's offense has looked really good the past 2 weeks, albeit they haven't played anybody, but Tyler Shough looks really good, and they really have some guys at wide receiver. I also expect the defense to be one of the ACC's best because of what they have back from last year, and also because of what they added from the portal. I'm not going to lie, I was personally sleeping on Louisville this offseason, but 2 weeks into the season, I'm thinking it could be Miami and Louisville in the 2024 ACC Championship game. Georgia Tech versus Syracuse was one heck of a game, and Syracuse ended up winning the game 31-28. Syracuse is another ACC team to keep an eye on because they have a very easy schedule and the offense does look really good with Kyle McCord at quarterback. Kyle McCord just looks like a completely different player from where he was at Ohio State. It's honestly hilarious. I was buying into the hype with the Georgia Tech a bit too much and I picked them to beat Syracuse, which I shouldn't have. I really should have known Syracuse was the better team. Georgia Tech's win against Florida State was a good win, but Florida State isn't as good as we thought they were, so Georgia Tech might be a little bit overrated, but who knows. And here we have the last ranked matchup of week 2. Clemson managed to beat App State 66-20, which was actually surprising to me. Clemson's offense looked really good, but I'm not going to overreact. I still think Clemson's offense is going to struggle when they play better opponents. Clemson is probably a 9-3 team this year, but being how bad NC State and Florida State looks, they might have a shot to make the ACC championship game. But really, I can't believe they actually scored 56 points in one half. That's crazy. Let's talk about a couple of unranked games. And what about Cal beating Auburn? Mendoza looks really good at quarterback for Cal, and Cal has some lockdown cornerbacks. I said Cal was going to be better than expected this year. I actually have them winning 8 games because of how well they have used the portal. But I actually wasn't expecting them to beat Auburn. Auburn really didn't look good, but regardless, this was a solid win for Cal. Kentucky is a team I'm expecting to take a step back and go 5-7. And a lot of people thought I was stupid for picking Kentucky to go 5-7, but teams around them are getting better and they have a tougher 2024 schedule. And I really don't like Brock Vandagriff at quarterback. And Kentucky just lost to South Carolina 31-6, so maybe I'll end up being right about Kentucky taking a step back. Because let's be real, losing to South Carolina by 25 is not going to cut it, and that's embarrassing. And the last game for the video I want to talk about is the game between Colorado and Nebraska. If any of you haven't noticed, Colorado isn't any different from last season, and Nebraska exposed them. Nebraska won this game 28-10, and it could have been much worse. They didn't run up the score in the second half. I really like this Nebraska team. And I'm telling you, if you look at the schedule, they have a realistic path to win 10 games. Because honestly, who are they going to lose to? Wisconsin does not look great at all. I think Nebraska should beat them comfortably. And I also think Nebraska is going to be better than Iowa this year. Let's not forget, last year Nebraska almost beat Iowa without a quarterback. And this year Nebraska is a lot better and they have a quarterback. I'm also not too high on Michigan, and I personally think Nebraska is a better all-around team than Michigan and Iowa. And it's still early in the season and it's hard to jump to conclusions, but I'm honestly considering Nebraska a Tier 2 Big Ten team with USC and Penn State. I'm bold enough to make these types of predictions because some of them can age pretty well. Some of them don't age well, but I think this one will age well. And anybody who thinks Michigan is still a playoff contender or a top tier team in the Big Ten is obviously watching a different sport than I am. Nebraska has a top 20 defense, maybe even better than top 20. They have the quarterback, they have the better wide receivers, and they are legitimately 4 deep at running back, and they have an experienced offensive line. I'm telling you guys, Nebraska is a sneaky team in the Big Ten, and do not sleep on them. They have a very favorable schedule, and I think Nebraska is legit. But anyways, that is going to do it for my Week 2 2024 college football recap. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing and also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.